coming up for the first fight on our main card, Clay Guida fighting in his 36th UFC fight, possibly a retirement fight. Just got moved up to the main card from the prelims. They're sort of shuffling fights around, so if this fight's before another one, then excuse us. We record on Tuesday night where they're still shuffling things around. But facing Joaquim Silva, now 5-4 in the UFC, came into the UFC 7-0, undefeated. Has had a mixed bag of results so far, but if you don't know Clay Guida, you're probably newer to UFC, and you're in for a wild ride of emotions with Clay Guida. It is from the first whistle. He is going to be bouncing back and forth. If you're watching video, he's going to bounce back and forth the whole time and just throw sporadic shots. He's going to wrestle fuck you until he's successful or until he's knocked out. And he's able to mix everything together. He uses hooks to enter, which can get him clipped pretty easily because he stands pretty square as he's throwing them. It's got him knocked out in the past, but I guess when you have 35 fights, pretty much everything that can happen will happen at that point. But his bread and butter and what makes him so successful and what makes him a fan favorite is that just gonna push the pace and exhaust the opponent, even if he's the less talented guy. He's just gonna make them tap. As soon as their energy's done, he's just gonna keep pushing and keep pushing and keep pushing. And against a guy like Silva, where his intangibles are horrible, that could breed a lot of success for him. Silva's not very durable. Silva's got bad cardio. Silva doesn't have good takedown defense. So there were a lot of things right off the bat that you're like, well, Clay Guida could have a lot of success. The difference is that Silva's got knockout power. Silva has 3 fights in his last 4 years now, so he hasn't been that active. But he's lost to some good fighters. His wins are against Jared Gordon and Jesse Bronson, but his losses are against Nasrat Haqparast, Arman Sarukian, who's obviously headlining this fight. But yeah, I mean, he looks good when you're staring at him, but he's not really that great. He's got the power to knock out Clay Guida, and that's how he'd win if he does, more than likely. But I think that Clay Guida could withstand a little bit of that, and then if he survives and sees the second round, well, here we go. It's the Clay Guida show, and this retirement fight could be very entertaining. Unlike our aforementioned Shogun Rua, who wasn't as sexy. He just sort of was like, I'm done. So, but Andy, what do you think about this fight? Everyone loves Clay Guida, and I keep saying Quay, like I've got a lisp or something like a little kid. Clay Guida, everyone loves it. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I love Clay Guida, man, but I do find this fight to be an interesting one where I'm not huge on either side. I feel like everything I'm seeing says that I should go with Silva. One tidbit about Silva that we need to touch on. His nickname is Neto BJJ. The guy has no submissions in the UFC. I mean, his nickname is literally like an Xbox gamer tag. Like, hey, Neto BJJ dropping in. But I think with his game, you're not going to see him doing a ton on the ground with Clay Guida. And he's going to be hard to wrestle. We saw that in the Sarukian fight where he almost had him beat. I mean, he looked okay against Sarukian. I thought he looked good. He wobbled him. I mean, he even worked the ground game. But for me, my thoughts with this fight is this. We're going to get 3 results here. There are 3 options. One is Clay gets absolutely clocked in the face and goes out and Silva wins by KO. Don't think it's going to happen. I mean, Clay has gotten knocked out a couple times. I think that option 2 is more likely because Clay does this a lot. Even though Neto BJJ himself is not one to get a submission in the UFC, it's not really his style according to his record. But I think Clay loves throwing his neck in the way and getting submitted. He is just so susceptible to that. Where he just kind of throws his neck out there, and then somebody, if you're good, you will find it with Clay. So that's option number 2, where Clay either gets hit and then he gets submitted. Option 3 is Clay works his magic. He gets a finish himself. Silva's got 4 UFC losses, 3 are by knockout and 1 by decision. I mean, Neto BJJ has no submissions to his record. Who's to say that Clay can't add a submission to his record in the loss column, right? So I'm going to go under 2.5 here for minus 145. And that's the play that I'm parlaying with Melt Costa, actually. So Melt Costa, I got a minus 230. And if you parlay that minus 145 and the minus 230 together, you get plus 140 odds. And I'm going to lay a whole unit on that. I absolutely love the under here because I think there's a myriad of results where we can find somebody getting put out, somebody falling asleep. And ultimately, I agree with you. This could be the one that Clay ends up retiring in. Oh, sorry. Before I let you go, and I want to hear your thoughts too. I didn't do Mr. Neto BJJ his justice. He did submit Neil Magny in a grappling contest in 2021. So sorry about that. My bad. Go ahead with what you think is going to happen in this one.
That was the point that I was going to lead off with. Joaquim Silva, I mean, he has no submissions in the UFC, but I mean, we do know that he's good at it. We do know that he's got it in the arsenal. And we do know, as you mentioned, that Clay Guida loves to shoot for doubles. And he loves to get his head caught in there. He's gotten guillotined, I think, 4 or 5 times in the UFC, which I know obviously sounds like a ton. He's got 36 fights, 17 losses, but of those 17 losses, 5 are to guillotine. And he's been rear naked choked a number of times. He's obviously been knocked out. So there's definitely the avenue where he just throws his neck in there. He gets cracked maybe, and then shoots for a takedown and gets guillotined real quick. Falls right into a guillotine. Wouldn't surprise me. But I think that the intangibles are the difference for me. Clay Guida is a dog. He's a dog. He's not as durable these days, and he could definitely just die to Silva and retire. But if he survives that first round, I think he's just going to run Silva ragged until he's exhausted. And then just eventually beats him until Silva submits. And to your point, I like that under 2.5 for that reason. Clay Guida fights at 110% the entire time. And I think that that's going to breed either a finish on his own sword. He's either going to fall on his own sword, or he's going to be able to finish Silva early. So I've got Guida for a half unit, just straight up, plus 270. That's actually moved down to plus 250 today. So I'll lock it in officially for plus 250. But then I'll take Silva by sub for a quarter unit at plus 300. So I think that if Silva wins, it could very likely be a sub. And so that would at least net me a quarter unit. If Guida wins, that would net me a full unit. So that's where I'm going on this fight. So Guida for a half unit, Silva by sub for a quarter unit. And Andy, you're going, remind me.
I'm going to pick Silva to win this one as my pick. But under 2.5 on this fight at minus 145, parlayed with Mel Costa at minus 230 for a parlay that comes out to plus 140 is my bet on this one. Rick's going with Guida on the value and the pick. I'm going with Silva as my pick, but under as my bet. Rick is probably going to make me use some of my free bets on Clay Guida when we are together this weekend. Can't wait. Stay locked in with us as we continue on in the middleweight division with Punahele Soriano taking on Dustin Stoltzfus. Hey, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to Pilsners and Prelims, a UFC betting podcast by Happy Hour Sports. Just want to ask if you could like and subscribe to the video if you like the content that we're putting out, and be sure to stay tuned to what we have coming up in the future. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you on the other side.